feels like a test that I fail, so depressed when I can't seem to get out. But something deep inside won't let me quit. I swear that I'm inspired by all this shit. Tell me that I can't and I won't. That's what guides me the most. Your lies, I'll do what I want. I'm inspired by thirst, I'm inspired by worth. I desire your worst, so you can just hide while I work. I ain't tired, you first. I'll write a second, third verse about the lies you go disperse.
Spencer, my name is everybody, and welcome back to my channel. Today, we are going to be talking about one of my favorite authors from my childhood, and that is Bruce Coville. Bruce Coville is a fantasy and sci-fi writer who has published over 100 elementary, middle school, and young adult books since 1977. He identifies as bisexual and states that each book that he writes is harder than the last because he does his best to not copy himself and ensure that he maintains a very high quality standard of writing. When I was growing up, I was absolutely obsessed with Bruce Coville's writing. I read so much of his work. I'm not exactly sure how much, but I read a significant portion of it. And because his writing was such a massive influence on my love of reading as a child growing up, I decided that it would be fun to go back and read a couple of the things that he has written and I loved in the past. So first up we have Jeremy Thatcher, Dragon Hatcher. I remember reading this specifically when I was in elementary school and is about a boy who hatches a dragon egg. On a similar line to that, we also have Hatched, which is a part of the Enchanted Files series. I don't remember this one as vividly, but I do know that I read it. And my absolute favorite, this is actually my personal copy, but I have no idea what ever happened to the dust jacket. I don't even remember ever having a dust jacket for this, but The Monsters of Morley Manor. I think I'm going to start off very simply with Jeremy Thatcher, Dragon Hatcher, because this one is so short and will be easy to get out of the way so quickly. It's only 150 pages. So I guess without further ado, let's get reading. So I've already finished Jeremy Thatcher, Dragon Hatcher. As you guys saw yesterday, it was absolutely pouring, so I wouldn't have been able to check in even if I wanted to. Just constant thunder and rain and noise and stuff going on. But also, because this was so short, it made it really easy for me to kind of just sit down and read this in one go. So this is about 12-year-old Jeremy Thatcher, who is running away from a girl who is trying to kiss him when he ducks into a magic shop and ends up buying a dragon egg for just $0.25. I wish. That was my kid wish. Like, reading this was basically essentially everything that I wanted as a small child. And that's kind of like the story, is just him raising this dragon before it is time to kind of set it free into the wild and stuff like that. So I'm gonna be giving this book 4 stars. The reason why it's not a full 5-star for me is because there isn't any sort of overarching conflict in the story at all. It's literally just about Jeremy raising his dragon and then letting his dragon go, and that's kind of it. It's very simple and stuff like that. But yeah, even though this was a elementary school book, I still wished that there had been a little bit of conflict. I thought at the very end there might be somebody who's gonna pop up and try and take Tiamat the dragon away. And that's something that I like about this book, is that the dragon's name is Tiamat, which is apparently, according to Babylonian mythology, the creator of the world was a dragon named Tiamat. So I learned something very new and interesting today. But I was also able to start Hatched. I am 50 pages into it, and this is about a main character who is a griffin, and his name is Gerald, and his entire thing is that he doesn't feel like he is quite up to snuff to being a griffin, so he wants to run away and escape into the human world, even though that is like illegal. You're not allowed to do that. Meanwhile, there is also a human named Brad. He has only been like minorly introduced. I assume that once Gerald gets to the human world, he's gonna meet Brad and they're gonna go on all sorts of adventures. But there has also been a little bit of a mention of some sort of like dwarf city that was abandoned mysteriously. Nobody knows what happened to it, and nobody's allowed to talk about it. There are a couple of topics that like you are not allowed to talk about at all, because it's just gonna cause like civil unrest to even discuss these topics, I think. So there is some propaganda and censorship from the magic government going on here. But something that I'm liking about this book so far is that it isn't written as like a normal book. It is written as the combination of diary entries and found documents and newspaper articles and other things. So that makes it very interesting, and it also makes it super easy to read when you're jumping back and forth between so many different like types of media, and the way that you're getting information is different and stuff like that. So that's kind of everything that I have right now for my reading. And now that you guys are all caught up with my reading, let's kind of get on with the day. Unfortunately, it didn't go as well as I would have hoped, because I like to write on Google Docs, but Google Docs will also like disconnect from the internet, and when it does that, even when I have offline writing turned on, it still doesn't let me write at all, and it'll just be like saying that it's trying to connect. And even though I was connected to the Wi-Fi at the library, it was doing that. Even when I went to a second library, that was still happening. So I decided to come back home, and I guess I'm gonna be writing here instead. The good thing though was I was able to get to 150 pages into Hatched, and to be honest, I'm not really liking this at all. The story for this is so slow. It took almost 100 pages just for the Griffin Gerald to leave his realm and come into the human world. And this is a 250 page book. So it almost took half of the book just for him to do the thing that he said that he's gonna be doing since page 1. Something that I do really like about this book though is that we have learned that the character, Brad, the human character, is half black, half white. There is mention of people kind of giving him weird looks when he is at the bus station with his white mom, and it does mention that he calls his grandmother Bibi because that means grandmother in Swahili. Usually when white authors write from the point of view of black characters, that makes me like a little bit iffy, but I think that it makes sense and is a good decision for Bruce Coville. Being such a popular author and having written over 100 books, I think it makes more sense to diversify the main characters that are going on here. I mean, you can only write so many straight, white, cis boys in these stories. You gotta start to diversify, and especially once you become a lot more popular, you want your readers to be able to really see themselves in like the work that you're putting out and stuff like that, so I really like that. But that's really the only thing that I'm liking about this, because, oh my god, even though there are so many pictures and the chapters are like so short and stuff like that, I am feeling like it is taking me forever to get through this book just because the story is so slow. This feels like such a slog. But I only got 100 more pages, so I guess I'm just going to push myself through it and see where we are when I come out on the other side. Days later, and I have finally finished Hatched, and I am going to be giving this book 2 stars. It took me so long to get back to this book just to finish the final 100 pages, and it didn't even take me an hour to read the final 100 pages, but that was how much I wasn't really liking the book and how slow everything was going and how slow I knew the rest of the book was gonna go. And in that assumption, I was right. There was some action in the last 100 pages, but it was really crammed in there, and it felt so forced and out of nowhere and weird, and I really didn't like much of this book. I mentioned that there was a gnome city that these gnomes had lived in, and then suddenly one day they like abandoned it and nobody knows what happens to it and nobody is allowed to talk to it, but they never mention why the gnomes suddenly abandoned this city, and they never mention why none of the magical characters are allowed to talk about the fact that these gnomes disappeared. It's just something that happened for some reason. Also, the new city that the gnomes live in is supposed to be something like super secret, but so many characters know about this. So many characters that don't even need to know about this city know about it. It is the most well-known secret city that I have ever heard of, because basically every single character that we meet in this story does end up knowing about this secret gnome city. So yeah, I didn't have a good time with reading this. I was very disappointed. It feels like Jeremy Thatcher Dragon Hatcher had more happen in that book, and it was 100 pages shorter than this book. So this was just such a disappointment for me. I feel really sad about that. But what I'm not feeling sad about is the fact that that means that now I get to move on to my absolute favorite book, The Monsters of Morley Manor. Growing up as a kid, I am pretty sure that I read this book at least 12 times. I feel like I just heard something. It scared the shit out of me. Wait a sec. Growing up as a kid, I read this book at least 12 times, and I am so excited to jump back into it. I've actually already read the first 5 chapters. I was a little bit worried at first because there are plenty of times in which you read something as a kid and you think that it is like amazing, incredible, but then when you go back to it as an adult, you realize how terrible it was and how blinded you were by your childhood innocence. But that is not happening with this book. It is as incredible as I remember it to be. So this book is about a boy named Anthony who goes to Morley Manor because old man Morley has passed on and the state has kind of acquired his home and is now selling all of his possessions. So Anthony goes to Morley Manor at the estate sale and buys this box that he opens later and finds all of these little monster figurines. But when he accidentally gets them wet, they come to life and it is revealed that these monsters were actually related to old man Morley, and there is a whole magical sci-fi adventure thing that is going on. So right now, Anthony and his sister Sarah are taking the monsters back to Morley Manor in order to get into a secret lab that is there and get the monsters like back to full size as opposed to the little like figurine size that they currently are. If you are somebody who likes A Wrinkle in Time, I really think that you're gonna like this book because it does have that combination of sci-fi and magic. They do have interdimensional travel in here. They are fighting these kind of like interdimensional beings and all sorts of things. There are just so many similarities to it that I think that if you liked A Wrinkle in Time, you would probably really enjoy this. And I am enjoying it so much that I think that I'm probably just gonna sit and finish reading this tonight because why not?
Let's go. Yeah. I'm like an addict, do I gotta have it. I ain't even playing, got a really bad habit. If it moves, gotta grab it, fuse like a magnet. Lose, won't have it till I'm doomed in a casket. I ain't playing, got a weird mind. If you work 8 hours, I'ma work 9. If the shoot tastes sour, you should taste mine. I'ma stay in power for a long time. Get up, nah, I ain't a quitter. Toss me the ball, I'm a really big hitter. Big picture, I'm a straight killer. Rising the song to the highest bidder. Got juice, got gas, I'ma move fast. New shoes, new tracks, like who's that? I'm new, come back, better than last. Yeah, it's a new me, never gonna look back. I'm never gonna look back. Cause damn, I was built to last. You move slow and I move fast, and that's facts. Only I can make a change. Slowly take a step today. I will never be the same. Cause that's what it takes. Pieces is a form of art. I'm never gonna look back. Cause damn, I was built to last. You move slow and I move fast, and that's facts. Only I can make a change. Slowly take a step today. I will never be the same. Cause that's what it takes.
The Monsters of Morley Manor, and I am definitely giving this book 5 stars. This is the book that made me fall in love with Bruce Coville, and I really hope that I find more of his works that are like this. The first 2 books that we read in this vlog were very simple and a disappointment. Well, I don't want to fully say disappointment, but it is not the same as this book that has so much interstellar space travel and mysteries and monsters, and there is constantly things happening. My favorite part in this book is definitely when the characters meet the mythical being that is so incredible that it transcends gender. Who's that? I asked. Ivanima is well, it's sort of a counselor, said the woman. It? I asked. Ivanima is too, well, it's too much to be a mere he or she. Below us stretched a great lake of ice. Chained flat on its back in the center of the lake was the most beautiful creature I had ever seen. It was shaped like a human, but it was enormous, maybe 100 feet long. Vast, perfectly formed wings stretched from its shoulders across the clear ice. Its face was calm and noble, with a broad, high brow and a mouth that seemed to be just on the verge of a frown on one side and just on the verge of a smile on the other. The sight of it made my heart ache with a longing to coax that smile into a bloom. If I had 100 years, I couldn't tell you what it meant to look into those eyes, except to say that it was like drowning in pain and beauty, and I was afraid that I might never be able to look into the regular world at anything else again. My mother once told me that the memory of pain fades. She said that if it didn't, women would never have more than one baby. I think that may be true for other things as well, things like beauty and love. If the memory of gazing into those eyes, each of which was a yard wide and several thousand miles deep, had not faded, I doubted that I could move in the world today. I would only sit and remember. Like, damn, there is like some crazy stuff going on in this book that I am just absolutely obsessed with, and I am just so happy that this book held up in my memory and all of that. I also really wish that this was a series instead of a standalone book, and I think that Bruce Coville could very easily turn this into a series because this book references so many other things that he could easily turn into their own stories. I mean, Gasper and his twins' adventures before they even like really got into all of this. His twin Martin lived in an alternate dimension for over 200 years. You can do all sorts of stuff with that. Like, there is so much stuff and so many things where they're like, oh yeah, we have this jewel and that was like from an adventure that we went on, but I like don't really have time to tell you about that right now. I would love a whole entire separate book that is that entire adventure that I could read about. I don't know, I just love this book and I am just so happy that I had a good time reading it. Well, that is kind of the end of my vlog. Thank you so much for coming and hanging out with me. If you liked this video, make sure to like it for more content like this. But besides that, don't forget to stay safe and have a fantastic day. Bye.